When Monica walked into Mr. Brown's room that morning, she was overcome with an intense foul odour that made her stomach twirl. For someone else, the smell was enough to run them out of the room and make them never come back. But after 4 years of doing this every day, Monica was used to the odour. She was a caretaker to Mr. Lance Brown, a wistful, 70-year-old man who had an accident several years ago that left him completely paralysed and perpetually confined to a wheelchair. As Mr. Brown's caretaker, Monica's duties were a lot and not limited to assisting him in mobility and navigation, handling his personal tasks such as bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, and so on, cooking his daily meals, keeping him company, etc. "Good morning, Mr. Brown," she greeted cheerily, walking to the edge of the bed. Mr. Brown blinked his eyes open without a word. He wasn't a morning person, and she was already familiar with this routine. She grabbed his wheelchair and wheeled it over to the side of the bed, after which she gently lifted him in and slid him into the chair, adjusting the straps. When he was comfortably in the wheelchair, Monica rolled up the dirty sheets and spread another on the bed, after which she wheeled him into the bathroom. She ran the bath, deftly took off his pyjamas, and took off his soiled incontinence pads. They had grown closer over the past 4 years, so there was no shame between them anymore. When Mr. Brown was naked, Monica hoisted him onto the bath lift and lowered him into the tub. They had done this twice every day for 4 years, so it was a routine for both of them. And in another few minutes, Monica had changed his pads, worn a fresh outfit for him, and combed his hair. "Thanks, Monica," Mr. Brown said. "Can I have a cup of coffee?" "Yes." As she wheeled him downstairs, she added, "Breakfast is ready. Would you like to eat now?" "Not yet. Coffee first." "Coming right up." In the kitchen, she made coffee and handed him a steaming cup, exactly how he liked it. Mr. Brown took a sip and briefly shut his eyes. "You never miss with the coffee, Monica. It's so good." "Thank you, sir." She turned to make herself a cup, adding milk and a few cubes of sugar, unlike Mr. Brown, who preferred to drink his black. "Monica?" "Yes?" She whirled to look at Mr. Brown, worried that he needed something. However, he was only staring at her intensely, his watery old eyes swimming with confusion. "Are you okay, sir?" "Why do you stay, Monica?" She frowned, unsure of how to approach the question. "I don't understand, sir." He shook his head with a sigh, and then took another sip of his coffee. "The way you care for me," he said. "You change my clothes and poop pads every morning, cook meals twice a day, take me on walks. It might be understandable if I'm paying you a huge sum of money, but I'm too poor to pay you anything. But you provide a roof over my head. Shelter is important. Come on, that's nothing compared to the gravity of work that you do every day. After my accident, some of my family came to help, but none of them lasted a week, even with adequate compensation. Till now, none of my family has come to visit, let alone care for me." He shook his head. "When you came into this house 4 years ago, I thought you wouldn't last 1 week because I couldn't afford to pay you." "I'm pleasantly surprised." Monica laughed. "Maybe your family doesn't know how witty and entertaining you are." She wiggled her brows, making him laugh. At first, one might mistake Mr. Brown for a sulking, grumpy old man. But once he got over his morning sullenness with some black coffee, he was like a ray of sunshine. In 4 years, he had taught her more than anyone ever had in her whole life. The truth was, she didn't really find caring for the elderly challenging at all. It actually gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She was in high school when she started taking care of her own grandmother. She did that for so many years while juggling schoolwork. Her life crumbled at 12 years when she lost her parents in a car crash. She had to go live with her maternal grandmother, Grace, who she had never seen before, in another town. It was ironic because her grandmother was supposed to take care of her, but she was too old and frail to do anything. So Monica prematurely took on the role of caretaker. For a little girl who had been at the mercy of her parents her entire life, Monica had to grow up fast. As Grace grew older, she became even sicker, and the more attention Monica needed to pay to her care. Grandma Grace was very understanding and would try to convince Monica to leave her alone and pay attention to her academics, especially on days when Monica would miss school because Grace was too sick to leave her bed. But Grace was the only family she had left, and Monica didn't want to lose her too. Besides, it wasn't like school was that interesting. Monica was always happy to miss a few days in a week because, on those days, she got to rest from all the bullying she faced in school. She was easy prey because they lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone, so her classmates knew she lived with her old grandmother, who could not defend her. So they committed all sorts of atrocities towards her. Of all the bullies in school, Monica feared Ashley the most. She was the chief bully, and every other person was her minions. Monica was very quiet and laid back, so she didn't know why Ashley had it out for her. Since Grandma Grace was poor, Monica never had any new clothes. Every cloth she had was from her mother, amended to fit her slim frame, making it obvious that she was wearing hand-me-downs. Ashley's parents weren't the richest either, but they were better than Monica's, so Ashley always had the prettiest dresses and shoes, which she would rub in Monica's face. When Monica came to school in her old dress and frayed shoes once, Ashley took weird pictures of her, printed them out, and posted them all over the school. She became a laughingstock. The most hurtful prank Ashley played was when she stole a teacher's wristwatch and planted it in Monica's bag. The teacher was going crazy looking for his expensive watch until he decided to search everyone's bag. Monica wasn't worried because she didn't take the watch, so it came as a rude shock when it was found in her bag. The teacher was so disappointed, and even when Monica insisted that she didn't know how it got there, no one believed her. Her classmates turned their noses up at her, while some called her thief to her face. It was horrible, and for weeks after this incident, Monica drifted through school as an outcast. No one wanted to be associated with her, and her non-existent social life died a violent death. It was after a month before Ashley privately confessed she did it, and that she didn't regret it. "Earth to Monica," Mr. Brown clapped, squinting at her. "You were lost." Monica shook her head and forced a smile on her face. "I'm fine." She hated thinking about the past because it stuck to her and left her gloomy with despair. She hated the feeling. "Can we stroll in the garden?" he asked. "Sure." Monica grabbed the handle of his wheelchair and swiveled it towards the back exit. The garden was cute and serene, a haven of tranquility, not only for Mr. Brown but for her as well. According to Mr. Brown, he planted all these beautiful flowers and tended the garden when he was agile and healthy, so strolling down the path always gave him a sense of peace. They talked for a while about this and that until Mr. Brown suddenly asked the question that he had only asked her once. "What do you want to do with your life, Monica?" Monica released a deep breath. "That's a big one, Mr. Brown." "Take your time," he said, and turned his attention to the gorgeous flower bed across from him. Monica didn't think she needed time to answer it. The answer was at the tip of her tongue, and it was that she didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. For her, finishing high school was a miracle, and she didn't dare dream that she would make it to college. When her classmates were excited about college life and rambling about their future careers, Monica hung in the back of the classroom, listening and wishing her life was different. Ashley and the others would mock her by asking her where she was going after high school, reminding her that her life could only end in that small town. She could not even attend her high school graduation party because Grandma Grace fell so ill she had to be rushed to the hospital. While her classmates were still enjoying the aftermath of the graduation party, Grandma Grace died, and Monica's life became worse. A distant relative of Grandma, who Monica had never seen but only heard about, came to the house 2 days after Grandma's death and evicted Monica, claiming he needed to use it. Monica could not ask any questions. She had to leave immediately. She had saved up some money doing menial tasks for the neighbours, so she moved into a cheap motel with this cash. Monica began to look for jobs to cater to herself. While her classmates, like Ashley and the other bullies, went to college, Monica worked different jobs. She worked as a waitress, a barista, a cashier and bagger, a house help, a delivery driver, name it. She did these menial jobs way into her 30s until the cost of living increased, and these jobs were no longer enough to pay for rent. Once again, she found herself stranded on the streets. It was harder for someone like her to get a job because she only had a high school degree, and she was no longer a teenager, so she could not defend it. When she came across an ad for a caretaker for an old, paralysed man, she called the number on the poster immediately. She didn't meet Mr. Brown right away. The interview was conducted by Kate, Mr. Brown's younger sister. It all went really well until Kate said they didn't have any money to pay the caretaker, and that they were hoping whoever took the job would be willing to do so in exchange for accommodation. At first, Monica wanted to refuse, but she thought about it. She needed money, yes, but most importantly, she needed a place to stay. She was tired of roaming the streets, and it was getting more dangerous to do that, especially since she was almost molested the other day. She took the job thinking she would do it for a few months while searching for better jobs. But she met Mr. Brown, and everything changed. He reminded her so much of her grandmother that Monica knew she could not leave him. They bonded so quickly that Kate was surprised. She said Mr. Brown didn't do well with the previous caretakers. After 2 years of caring for Mr. Brown, Monica knew it was the best decision ever. She might not have made it to college, but she doubted anyone who did could match up to her in knowledge, thanks to Mr. Brown. Since he learned, on one of their walks through the garden, that she only made it through high school, he made it his duty to teach her everything he knew. That was how Monica found out he was very educated. He talked about interesting facts in science, history, physics, business, and everything. He gave her books to read and would quiz her about them when she was finished. Monica knew that this was a rare opportunity, so she took it, devouring every book she found in his library and asking millions of questions about it, all of which he wondered patiently. This morning, he asked why she stayed despite him being too poor to pay her, but he didn't know that he had done more for her than she had for him. She appreciated all the knowledge he freely gave, and she would continue to care for him for as long as she could. Still thinking? Mr. Brown's soft inquiry yanked her from the past back into reality. "I don't know what I want to do with my life," she said, looking at him. "All I know is that I feel restless." "What do you mean?" he asked with genuine interest. "All my former classmates are chasing good careers right now," she said. "I guess I just want to feel that way too, like I'm busy doing something. I don't know if I want to return to college, but I want to chase something and be good at it." Mr. Brown smiled at this but didn't say anything else. Monica hated stalking her former classmates on social media, but the last time she checked, Ashley was doing well and was now in the media. The rest of them were also involved in profitable careers. "You've not had breakfast," she said to Mr. Brown. "Let's go in and have some." "I don't want to." Mr. Brown coughed once and began to wheeze and gasp for air. Monica felt a pang of worry and quickly wheeled him back inside. He was back to breathing normally when they were in the living room, but she couldn't shake off her worry. He started this 2 months ago when he would suddenly begin to wheeze and gasp for air like he had shortness of breath. She had suggested going to the hospital so many times, but he would only shake his head and laugh at her worry. "Mr. Brown, I think we—" "No," he shook his head. "No hospitals. I've been in enough hospitals to last me the rest of my life." When Monica didn't smile, he chuckled. "Okay, fine. I'll eat breakfast." "Would that make you happy?" "Only for a moment," she said, taking him into the kitchen. "The next time it happens, I'm calling Kate, or taking you to the hospital myself." "Yes, ma'am." The following day, after his morning bath, coffee and breakfast, Mr. Brown made a request. "There's somewhere I want you to take me to." Monica looked up from her book, her eyes squinting with interest. Mr. Brown never liked to leave the house and would sulk at the suggestion. His definition of outsize was a stroll around the garden. "Okay, where would you like to go?" He smiled. "A cafe downtown." "A cafe?" Monica screeched. "You're craving pastries?" He laughed. "No, this cafe is different. You'll see when we get there." "Now I'm excited." She wheeled Mr. Brown outside the house and towards the car, using a lift to get him inside the vehicle. "What's the address?" she asked. "I'll need to enter it into the GPS." "Don't worry, just drive, I'll direct you," he said. Monica glanced back at him. "You haven't left the house in years, you old man. I don't want to get lost," she teased, and he laughed. "I may forget my name," he said, "but I'll never forget how to get to the cafe." His voice shook with so much emotion that Monica didn't ask any more questions. She drove out of the house, silently following his directions until they stopped in front of a worn-out building. "Is this it?" Monica asked Mr. Brown in confusion. "Yes. Help me out?" he answered, his voice shaking with an excitement she had never heard from him. "What's the name of the cafe?" she asked as they stood in front of the building. "I doubt they sell anything here anymore. It's empty." "The name used to be Busy Bee Cafe," he said, "but it's an old place. The name probably washed off or something. Take me inside." The paint on the building looked cracked and weathered, with patches of discoloration that hinted at better days. It had large front windows that were designed to entice passers-by to look inside and come in, but the windows were now smudged and hazy. As they walked through the door, it creaked slightly, and overhead, a bell jingled. Mr. Brown laughed heartily. "Oh, I miss this place." The interior looked better, and Monica looked around, trying to imagine what Mr. Brown was seeing. She only saw tables and chairs arranged neatly in a corner, a small stage across the room, and a counter cluttered with unused equipment. The glass display was empty, behind which was an espresso machine that Monica was certain didn't work. "What is this place?" she asked. "My favourite place in the world," she said. "I used to come here all the time. I have so many memories connected to this place." He looked so euphoric that Monica retreated into a corner to let him be alone with his thoughts. Sometimes she wished she could understand what was going through his head, but in times like this, as she looked into his eyes, she saw melancholy over the life he used to live. She could only hope that when she was his age, she didn't have the same look in her eyes. Mr. Brown started to cough again, and Monica started towards him, but he held out his hand to stop her. "Mr. Brown?" "I'm fine," he answered between breaths. Monica painfully watched him struggle for the air for a few minutes before his breathing went back to normal. It was a little cold out here, so Monica suggested returning home. "Should we go back home?" she asked. After a long moment of staring into space, he finally nodded, a peaceful smile on his face. "Yes, let's go." The following day, Monica knew she had to call Kate. This time, she didn't ask Mr. Brown about it, because he would just say no. When she went into his room to bathe him, he was already awake and suffering severe shortness of breath. There was also a mild bluish tint to his lips and fingernails, and it scared her even more than his gasps. "Mr. Brown?" She touched him gently. His eyes slowly fluttered open, and for a moment he blinked hazily at her. "Hannah?" "What?" Monica frowned. "It's Monica. Mr. Brown." His eyes widened. "Hello, Monica. Morning." She didn't say another word and instead proceeded to change his pad and clean him up as best as she could while he was lying on the bed. For a moment there, he didn't recognize her, and that was never a good sign. Add that to the bluish tint on his lips and nails, and she knew he needed medical care immediately. When she had changed his clothes, she hurried out of the room to call Kate. The woman lived in the neighborhood but hardly came to visit. Mr. Brown also never called her for anything, but today was different. Monica could not make any decision concerning Mr. Brown without consulting his family members. Kate picked up her call immediately. "Monica, hi. Is everything okay?" When she opened her mouth to speak, she realized that tears stung her eyes, so she took a breather before talking. "I don't know. It's Mr. Brown," she said. "He's not breathing well, and his lips are turning blue." "What?" the woman shrieked. "Call the ambulance. I'll be there soon." Kate arrived at the same time the ambulance did, and since they required a family member to be with him in the vehicle, only Kate could go. As they wheeled Mr. Brown into the car, he called for Monica. "Monica!" His voice sounded so small and frail. She rushed to him, struggling not to cry. "Yes, I'm here." He motioned for her to lean closer, and she did, wondering what he wanted to say. "Thank you." He grabbed her arm, and this time tears slipped down her face. "Come back home and thank me," she answered. "Please." His blue lips pulled up in a smile. "You have a kind heart. Please don't ever lose it. The world is full of evil, but people like you keep the wheels turning." He squeezed her hand again before letting go. Monica stepped back as they carried him into the ambulance and drove off. Throughout the night, Monica couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Mr. Brown told her and how it sounded so final. She wanted to go to the hospital, but Miss Kate had told her to wait for instructions, so she waited patiently, even though all she wanted was to be beside Mr. Brown. Monica didn't get a wink of sleep that night, so early the next morning, she took her bath, ready to head to the hospital. She didn't care what Kate said. She also had a right to be beside Mr. Brown since she'd cared for him alone for 4 years. She was already dressed and ready to leave home when the doorbell rang. Confused, she walked towards it. No one ever came to visit, so who could be at the door? When she peeked through the door hole and saw Kate, she yanked the door open and belted the poor woman with questions. "How is he? I was just about to go to the hospital. Is he okay? Is the blue tint gone?" "Monica," Kate called gently. "I'm sorry, but Lance passed away in his sleep." Monica felt numb, her body emptying in reaction to those words. Kate walked into the house and sat on the couch. He was diagnosed with acute respiratory failure. Apparently, he's known for a long time and kept to himself. Guilt and despair racked through Monica, but she managed to stay strong in front of Miss Kate. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Miss Kate," she said. The woman smiled. "And I'm sorry too, Monica. I know how much you loved him, and he loved you too. He only had great things to say about you." When Kate left a few minutes later, Monica broke down in tears. She hadn't cried this hard since Grandma Grace, and it just drove home the fact that she loved Mr. Brown just as much. She walked around the empty house, reliving all the memories she shared there with Mr. Brown. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that Mr. Brown knew he was going to die. There was something ominous about his trip to the downtown cafe. In all the 4 years she'd known him, he never left the house to go anywhere, no matter how much she tried to convince him. What were the odds that he died a day after his trip to his favorite place in the world? 5 days later, Monica received $1,000 in her bank account from Kate and a message saying the family required her to leave the house in 1 week because their relatives were moving in. Deflated, Monica realized she was back to where she was 4 years ago, homeless. With the $1,000, she moved her things into a motel, leaving the house and all the memories of Mr. Brown behind. She started hunting for jobs because the $1,000 was not going to last more than a few days. She needed security. She craved it. She might not have been earning money for the past 4 years, but she had a roof over her head, constant food, and an intelligent companion. Now, they were all gone. It was as difficult to find a job now as it was 4 years ago, Monica thought when she returned to her motel that night. The bed creaked as she lay on it, and she realized that she was running low on cash. In a few days, she might not be able to pay for this room, and she will be back on the streets. When her phone rang, she didn't pick up at first because she was too dejected to have a conversation. But then her curiosity got the best of her as she wondered who the unsaved number belonged to. "Hello?" she said into the phone. "Hi," a male voice answered. "Am I on the phone with Monica Wright?" Monica hesitated for a few seconds before nodding. "Yes." "Marvellous," the man said. "My name is Colin Brooklyn. I'm Mr. Brown's lawyer. You know him. He just passed." "I know him," Monica cut him off. "Is there a problem?" "He left you something," he said. She stared at the phone long after the call ended, confused and curious. What could Mr. Brown have left her? He had nothing. The only thing he had that was of any value was the house, and his relatives had moved in. What could he possibly have for her? Monica met Colin in the cafe the following evening. He was a tall man with a friendly expression. "You're Monica?" "Yes." They shook hands. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Same here," he said, directing her to the chair across from him. "I feel like I already know you with how much Brown talked about you." Monica laughed. "Thank you for your kindness towards him," Colin said. "It's morning." "I'd do it again," Monica added. "He wanted you to have this." Colin produced a book and slid it towards her. Monica picked it up, laughing when she read the title. How to Run a Cafe. "Mr. Brown has always had the best sense of humour," she said, running her hand over the soft cover of the book. She felt elated that Mr. Brown appreciated her enough to leave her a gift. "I was surprised to see he left you a book," Colin said. "I'm not," she chuckled. "He always loved giving me books to read. The only difference now is that he won't be here to quiz me about it." Bile rose to her throat, and she struggled to squash it. She didn't want to cry over Mr. Brown anymore because she was sure he was finally at peace. Later that night, she curled up on her rickety motel bed to read the book, but when she opened it, a letter fell out of the pages. Confused, Monica sat up and began to read. "My dearest Monica, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I'm writing this letter to thank you for taking care of me. When you came into my life, I thought it would be temporary, like many others before you, but you proved your love and kind-heartedness. Every morning, when you walked into my room, you showed me what selflessness was. I kept waiting for the day you would tell me you were done, but it never came, and now you're reading this. In a way, you were like a daughter to me, and I wished you had come into my life earlier than you did. I told you I used up all my wealth in treating myself, but the truth is, years after my accident, I fell very ill and thought I was going to die, so I donated all my wealth to various charities. Alas, I didn't die, and I no longer had any money to pay for my care. When you came in, I knew I had to do something, because you proved to be more selfless than any of my family were. Remember my favourite place in the world? I'm sure you were confused and wondering why I took you there. It was because I wanted you to see it. After all, it's yours. The cafe has been failing for many years, and 4 years ago the owner wanted to sell it to a construction company. I couldn't bear to let it go, so I bought it. Because there was no one to manage it, the cafe has died completely. But I have hope that with you, it will rise to its former glory. You are a hard-working lady, and if there's anyone that can fix it, it's you. Don't let anyone ever dim your light, Monica. I promise that you will get to the top. I'll miss you very much and hope that you continue reading. P.S. Finish this book before you start running the cafe. You'll need it. Smiley face. Monica laughed and sobbed at the same time, with heavy tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe that she was now the owner of a cafe. She was still crying when Colin called. "Have you read the book?" "Yes," she answered, unsure of whether to tell him what was really in the book. "I'll be sending you the legal documents of the cafe later in the week," he said. "Brown also left you some money to start. It's nothing much, but it can help." "Thank you so much. I can't believe this." "You're as sweet as he said you were," Colin said. "You didn't know he was giving you a cafe, yet you were so appreciative of the book. I wish you lots of good luck in your life, Monica. People like you are what we need in the world." The euphoria of owning a cafe quickly faded over the next few months. When she first returned to the cafe after finding out it now belonged to her, she was still very excited about it. She took stock of the inventory, drafted a business review, assessed all the equipment that was still working, and noted the ones she still had to replace. After reading the book Mr. Brown left, she thought she knew it all, but 3 months after taking ownership, she was still struggling. She used the bulk of the money Mr. Brown left her to refurbish the exterior and gave it a new name, Memories. The rest of the money she used to buy some baking equipment and pay 4 months' rent in advance. She knew she needed a staff because the workload was a lot for her alone, but she was back to being broke and could barely afford anything else. She printed posters and did online ads, but still, people hardly came to the cafe. On some days, she would bake pastries, and only 5 pieces out of a whole bunch would be sold, leaving the rest to spoil. It was frustrating, and Monica ended up in tears every night because she was losing more money to this cafe and not making any at all. Sometimes she asked herself why Mr. Brown thought this was the best gift to give her, but she would quickly feel guilty because he didn't have to give her anything at all. Also, Colin told her she could sell it if she wanted to because technically it was now hers. But Monica would never do that to Mr. Brown. He left this cafe because he wanted her to learn a lot about business and life. She was learning, but did it have to be so hard? On this particular day, Monica went to the cafe like always. She baked a few pastries and displayed them in the show glass, hoping today would be different. However, it was worse. Until evening, when she closed the cafe, she didn't sell anything. She sank onto the floor, her head aching and her heart breaking. She could feel how close she was to quitting. And right there, she began to remind herself that Mr. Brown loved this place, so she couldn't sell it off and disappear. While she was contemplating this, someone knocked on the glass. She rushed to her feet, hoping it was a customer. Although the closed sign was right there for anyone to see, she was willing to sell because she hadn't sold anything all day. But when she opened the door, a young man stood outside, wearing casual clothes with a gentle expression. The wind howled behind him, sending gusts of cold into Monica's face, reminding her that it was wintertime. "Do you want to buy something?" she asked, shivering from the cold. The day started cold. She didn't know it had gotten this bad. She had to leave quickly so she wouldn't get caught in a storm or something. "No," the man shook his head. "I was hoping I could hide in here for a few minutes. The cold is biting, and I fear my face will fall off," he laughed. Monica didn't laugh. It was getting dark, and common sense told her it was dangerous to let this man into her space when she was alone. But it was really cold, so there was no reason to doubt him. "Don't you have a home?" "No," he pursed his lips. "I'm homeless for now." After deliberating over it for a few seconds, she stepped away from the door. "Please come in." "Thank you." The man breathed a sigh of relief and hurried inside, heading straight for one of the chairs. Monica gave him a wide berth and chose to sit behind the counter where she had access to dangerous kitchen knives in case he acted funny. However, the man didn't speak to her. He was content to sit on the chair while gazing out through the large windows. The interior of the cafe was so serene that Monica forgot the stranger and got lost in her thoughts again. She was still thinking about what to do with the cafe when she heard the man's voice. "Thank you for letting me stay, Ma'am." She looked up to see him walking towards the door, about to leave. "Hey," Monica stood. "Where are you going in such weather? You're homeless." He smiled. "The wind isn't as strong as before. I'll manage." Monica knew how it was to be homeless. She knew how jarring it was to be at the mercy of people, and yet they treated you like trash. She looked around the cage. Asking the man to sleep over could be dangerous because he could steal all her new equipment and disappear before she arrived tomorrow. But Monica was willing to take the risk, rather than let him venture out into the cold. So many times when she was homeless, she had prayed for mercy such as this from strangers, and never got any. She would be the change the world needed. "You can stay here for the night," she said to him. "By morning, the cold will have reduced. Then you can go." He beamed at her. "Thank you so much. You're an angel." "You're welcome." Monica grabbed her bag and left him at the cafe. The next morning, she arrived at the cafe ready to take a loss if the stranger she had left there stole everything and ran away. However, when she opened the door, she saw the strange man wiping the floors. All the chairs were on the table, and they looked clean. The windows were sparkling, and so was the counter and show glass. She gaped at him, and he glanced up with a smile when she came in. "Hi." "Hi?" she smiled. Yesterday, she couldn't really take in his appearance because she was in such a sad mood. But this morning, she saw that he was more handsome than she thought. He looked to be in his early 40s and seemed too clean to be homeless. But Monica didn't want to perpetuate a stereotype because some homeless people prioritize appearance. "You cleaned," she said dumbly, setting her bag on the counter before folding her arms. "Yes, I did." "You know you didn't have to." "I know." He nodded, leaning on the mop. "But I wanted to return the kindness. Thank you for yesterday." "You're welcome." "I can't shake your hands because mine are dirty," he chuckled. "My name is Harris." "I'm Monica." "Okay, please give me a few minutes to wash my hands. I'll be back." He disappeared into the back room, leaving Monica surprised at how much work he had already done. By the time he reappeared, she had arranged the chairs. She knew she might not have any patrons, but it was worth the try. "Monica," Harris said to her, "I don't want to ask for too much, but if you let me, I can help." "What do you mean?" "You need help," he said. "I see so many things around here that need to be done, and you can't do it on your own." Monica sighed. "Harris, I appreciate your offering, but I cannot afford a staff. I don't need money. I only need accommodation. If you let me stay, I'd be happy to help." Monica remembered her arrangement with Mr. Brown and how it turned out. If Mr. Brown hadn't left her this cafe, she would have left that arrangement with nothing. "Harris, is that a good idea?" she asked. "I think you would need money for so many things, like—" "I'm a grown man, Monica," he said. "I know what I want." Monica chuckled. "Okay, you can stay here." "Thank you, I promise you won't regret it." A month later, she hadn't regretted it. Harris was a blessing to her. Even though the cafe was still struggling and they never had customers, Monica felt like she now had a companion. She was never alone. While she worked, Harris was with her, talking and keeping her company. On days when she felt pulled down by the weight of the struggling cafe, he was there to cheer her up and make her laugh. He understood all her struggles, and she felt like she would not have made it this long without him being around. Monica knew that it wasn't only gratitude she felt for Harris. She liked him too. He was handsome and charismatic, but they would never work. She hardly knew anything about him, and he always shied away from talking about himself. It was only a matter of time before he disappeared the same way he came, she thought. She was trying so hard not to get attached because his leaving would hurt. "Monica." She looked up from her book to see Harris standing across the counter, a worried expression on his face. "What? You have eye bags under your eyes. Have you been sleeping?" Monica sighed. Not really. Every night thinking about this cafe keeps me up, she confessed. It's so hard. You should get some rest. Yeah, sure, she nodded. When I get home tonight, I'll take some sleeping pills. No, he laughed. I don't mean that type of rest. I'm talking about a long one. Maybe a week, for starters. For starters, Harris. What? She laughed. You know I can't leave the cafe. Why not? He asked. We're not getting patrons yet and you're already burned out. To make this work, you have to be in good health. Taking care of yourself is important. Take 1 week off. I'll handle everything while you're away. Monica sighed, trying so hard not to think about how much she needed the rest. Harris was right. She was burnt out. But it could be boring and depressing to stay here alone. Harris, I insist, he said, drifting away. I don't want you to come in tomorrow. Stay away for 1 week. You need the rest. So Monica stayed away. For 1 week, all she did was sleep, read books, watch TV, and eat a lot. Oh, and she talked to Harris too. Sometimes during the day and every time during the night. He told her the cafe was faring well, but Monica knew he was only trying to make her feel better. However, she anticipated his call every night. They talked about the cafe for the first few minutes and everything else for almost an hour, until they both had to go to sleep. 1 week later, Monica got up early, bathed, wore a nice dress, and headed to the cafe. It had been a week since she saw Harris, and yes, she missed him. Somehow, she also missed the cafe. It might have been failing, but it was hers, and she loved it. The first thing she noticed when she got there was that the door was permanently open, and that was because people were coming and going. Her mouth fell open as she approached the cafe, wondering whether she was dreaming or not. However, when she walked in and saw Harris hurrying busily around as he attended to patrons, she gasped. The cafe was full to the brim and buzzing with noise and activities. When Harris saw her, he beamed and flung her an apron. Get to work, Monica, it's a busy morning, he said, heading to the best table to take orders. It really was a busy morning, and for hours, up until noon, Harris and Monica were on their feet. A few minutes past noon, the crowd thinned, and they could finally catch a break. Monica had been unable to talk to Harris all morning, so as soon as they were able to rest, she grabbed his arm and dragged him into the office at the back. Harris, what happened? She shrieked, her heart bursting with joy. It's only morning, and they've just made the total amount of money Mr. Brown left as capital. If things continued this way, she was well on her way to financial freedom. Well, not only her, she and Harris, because he obviously did something. I ran ads, he said, chuckling. Monica scoffed. Oh, please, I've run ads before. Different types, physical and online. Nothing worked. You didn't run it like mine, he said cryptically. No. Monica shook her head. There's something you're not telling me. She touched his arm. Please tell me. This is mind-blowing. Harris sighed. Okay, I'll tell you, but on one condition. What's that? That you go on a date with me. Monica gasped, butterflies erupting in her belly. Of course, she would go on a date with him, even without the clause he added. But she didn't want to be too obvious, so she narrowed her eyes. If I go, you'll tell me. I will. Okay, she said. I'll go on a date with you. The following evening, Harris took her to one of the most exclusive eateries in town. Monica wondered how he got the money to afford this place, but she refused to ask because that would be rude. When they ordered their meal, he also requested an expensive red wine, and she started to worry again. She didn't want him to go broke trying to impress her. Monica decided to stop fretting and focus her attention on the handsome man in front of her. When they were done eating, Harris filled their glasses with wine. I can't wait anymore, she said with urgency. Tell me what you did to change Memories Cafe. I'm interested, please, Harris. Okay. He leaned forward. I have decades of experience in turning fledgling businesses around. I'm a businessman. Monica frowned. I don't understand. I'm not a homeless man, Monica, Harris said softly. I only pretended I was so I could help you. Her mouth fell open. It still doesn't make any sense. How did you know I needed help? Because the old geezer told me he would be handing the cafe over to you. And he made me promise to keep an eye on you and to step in if I notice that you are struggling. Mr. Brown? Monica gasped, unable to believe her ears. You knew him? He was an old friend and mentor. I was with him for years until his family decided I was too close and butted me out, he said sadly. But we kept in touch. He told me amazing things about you and made sure I promised to help you. You're everything he said you were and more. I've never met a kinder soul than you. Tears slipped down her face as she thought about how Mr. Brown was a gift that kept on giving. He gave her the cage to teach her, and then provided a backup plan in case she needed help. It was surreal. She wished she could hug him again. So, what would have happened if I didn't let you stay that cold evening? Monica asked. Harris shrugged. I still would have helped. I promised my friend I would help, and it wasn't dependent on you. But I've only come this far because I like you, Monica. You're a special woman, and I don't ever want to stop helping you. Together, we can take Memories Cafe to unbelievable heights. When Harris said he would help Monica take her cafe to an unbelievable height, he wasn't joking. In 1 year, Memories Cafe was the most frequented spot in the city, even though it was located downtown. The demand was so heavy that they built another branch uptown. A day before the official opening, Monica was running around the cafe, organizing the staff and helping them take orders when her phone rang. It was Harris. Are you ready? He asked. I'm outside, let's go. Okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. She yanked off her apron and left it on the counter. I'm leaving, she said to Daniela, the head of staff. She now had 20 staff in this branch and needed someone to manage them. Daniel ruled with an iron hand, and Monica loved it. Keep things in order. I don't want to complain when I come in tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Daniel. She rushed outside and slipped into Harris's car. As soon as she got in, he wrapped his arms around her and kissed her cheek. They had started dating 5 months ago, and it was the best thing that had ever happened to Monica. He was very adept in business, which made him a wealthy businessman. He had also transferred that knowledge to her, which was why she was also a wealthy cafe owner for almost 2 years running this cafe. I missed you today, he said. I love you. I love you too. She kissed his cheek and snapped the seatbelt around her torso as he started the car. They were on their way to a boardroom meeting to discuss the agenda for tomorrow's grand opening ceremony for their second cafe branch. So many dignitaries would be in attendance. Nothing must go wrong. We should go on a vacation after tomorrow's ceremony, Harris said to her. We've put in a lot of work. We deserve rest. This time, Monica didn't argue. They were making a lot of money, and they had enough staff to carry on the operation when they weren't around. They could afford to go on a vacation. Where do you want to go? She asked. You should answer that, he said. As long as you're with me, anywhere can be a vacation. The opening ceremony was going wonderfully well, and Monica couldn't be more proud. Still, she couldn't help but move around the venue, instructing her staff and other hired personnel on what to do. The paparazzi were here too, and although they're good for spreading awareness and coverage, she didn't want them coming too close, so they didn't make her guests uncomfortable. As the event was in full swing, she stood with the chief of security, detailing how she wanted his team to work. There were some popular celebrities. The paparazzi were going to have a field day, and although she didn't mind, she needed them to be couth. I understand your worries, ma'am, John, the security chief, said. I'll make sure your guests are protected from the camera as much as we can. Yes, we should... Monica, Monica turned, and when she saw the caller, her stomach dropped. Even though it had been almost 2 decades, she would recognize that face anywhere. It was the face in her nightmares. Ashley. Ashley had put on a few pounds and her face was still covered in a ton of makeup. There was a huge camera in her hand. Ashley? Monica's voice trembled slightly as she recognized the familiar figure in front of her. "Of course you remember me," Ashley laughed, her voice tinged with arrogance. She flipped her long, glossy hair with a practiced flick of her wrist. "What are you doing at an event like this?" Her eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Monica, caught off guard, managed an awkward smile. She searched her mind for the right words, feeling the pressure of Ashley's intense gaze. "Well, I am working here," she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. Ashley rolled her eyes dismissively, looking Monica up and down as if seeing her for the first time. "I'm just surprised they even hired you," she sneered. Monica's smile faded into a sad expression. Some people never changed. She had often wondered what she would do if she ever ran into Ashley again. She had told herself she would be willing to forgive, if only Ashley had shown any signs of change. Clearly, she hadn't. "What about you?" Monica asked, changing the subject. "What brings you here?" "Oh, we're very important guests. I work for a prestigious media company," Ashley boasted, straightening her posture. "My team and I were invited to make exclusive coverage of this event." Monica knew that wasn't true. No specific media house had been invited. They had all requested to cover the event. Only 5 had been accepted, including Ashley's, it seemed. "Don't be shocked," Ashley laughed, her eyes scanning the crowd. "At least you look better than you did in high school. If you do your job well, maybe this place can get you some nice tips. In fact, why don't you go get me something to drink? I might even tip you $1 or 2, she added mockingly. Just then, the speakers boomed with a chime and the MC's voice filled the air. "Now, we will invite on stage the owner and CEO of Memories Cafe, Miss Monica Wright." The crowd erupted into applause, eagerly anticipating Monica's entrance. Ashley's expression morphed from shock to realization, and then back to shock. Monica stood, meeting Ashley's bewildered gaze with calm confidence. "They'll get you your drink in a minute," Monica said and smiled. Ashley stayed rooted to the spot, utterly shocked. As Monica began to walk towards the stage, Ashley burst into hysterical laughter, trying to salvage her pride. "Monica, please, when you said you worked here, I thought you meant as one of the servers. I really didn't mean to." But Monica was already moving past her, focused on her upcoming speech. Ashley's words faded into the background, irrelevant like empty air. Monica stepped onto the stage, ready to embrace her moment, leaving Ashley to grapple with her astonishment. Monica and Harris were in their car, driving down a long path toward a cemetery. It had been 6 months since they opened their second branch and a week since they had been officially married. They had been planning a vacation for the longest time, and they had finally taken action. Their luggage was set, tickets were bought, and they would be flying out to Italy tomorrow. But before they went, they both wanted to thank and say their final goodbyes to a wonderful friend. Harris parked the vehicle in front of the cemetery, and they both descended the car. He reached for her hand while staring affectionately at her. "Are you sure you want to do this? I can go in there alone." "No," Monica shook her head. "When he died, his sister prevented me from being with him. I want to see him one last time." "Okay." Harris smoothed a hand down her hair and tugged her arm. "Let's go." They walked through the gate and meandered through different headstones before arriving at Brown's. His name was boldly engraved on it in a beautiful font. Monica set the flower bouquet on the gravestone before bending down to kiss it. Silent tears fell from her face. "Thank you, Mr. Brown," she said softly, "for everything. You hated emotions, but since you can't do anything about it right now, I'll just say it. I love you. I wish I could hug you one last time, but I'll hug your gravestone instead and hope you feel it up there. I'll never temper with the legacy you left me and will always make you proud. I love you." She hugged the gravestone tightly for a long moment before stepping back. Harris stepped forward. "Brown, I kept my promise, but I got more than I bargained for," he said. "You thought you were sending me to help Monica, but you indirectly changed my life. I hope you have a palace where you are, because you deserve it. I may never have told you, but I'm sure you knew I loved you. I still do. We got this, Monica and I. Thank you for the opportunity. We will keep your name alive." It was funny how life compensated people who deserved it. In the twinkle of an eye, Monica's life changed. She was sitting in her office in the Uptown Cafe branch. It was located at the top of the building with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skylines. As she reminisced on life, she smiled. She still hadn't gone to college, and she didn't think she ever would. She was exactly where she needed to be, with a handsome man who loved her and pregnant with a baby boy, who they planned to name Brown. Life had indeed been a roller coaster of emotions and experiences, hardships that tested her strength and losses that deepened her soul. Yet, through it all, there was a golden thread that wove its way through the fabric of her journey: kindness. As the final hues of the sunset faded to twilight, Ashley felt a peaceful resolve settle in her heart. With a soft smile, she whispered to the cool evening breeze, "Kindness brought me home. Now let me spread it